Hello everyone, David here. Today I'd like to talk about the Nreal Air AR glasses, and the reason I think these are particularly cool is because they are, true to the name, very lightweight at just over 80 grams. They're pretty comfortable to wear, not much of an imposition at all, and they are quite good displays. They're 1080p displays inside the glasses, and they say it's an equivalent of a 130-inch display at 4 meters away. And they are a great partner device to the Steam Deck. So let's get into it. Yeah, so if you want to use these with the Steam Deck, it's a really simple setup. You take the included USB-C to USB-C cable and plug it into the USB-C port at the end of one of the glasses arms there. And then pop these on your head. And then the other end of the USB-C cable just goes straight into the Steam Deck at the top. And then in gaming mode, the Steam Deck will detect that you have an external display connected, and then you can play your games. And the Steam Deck basically functions as if it was a glorified controller, and I'm seeing the display in the glasses. And the glasses have built-in speakers as well, so I've got audio piped through to the little speakers just above my ears. And this is a very comfortable and cool way to play a game. Now, while I'm using it in this mode, the display is moving with my head. So I've got this enormous display in what appears to be in front of the glasses. So as I move my head around, the display is locked to my head at the same time. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable at times because it's a very big display. So if you want to look at a different bit of it, you've got to look with your eyes rather than turning your head. And that might become a little bit disorientating to some people, but once you learn to use it and kind of just learn that you have to keep your head in the same place, it's actually still really fun. Okay, so a lot of reviews talk about the device in detail, but don't really show you a lot of captured footage. So here's my best attempt to do that. It's basically just my phone peering in through the right display of the glasses. And I think the best way I can describe it is to say that it looks like a good, modern 1080p OLED monitor. It really does feel like a very large display. They say 130 inches at 4 meters away, and it does pretty much feel like that. So for comparison, my TV is 77 inches, and when I sit about 2.8 meters away from it, it seems slightly smaller than the Nreal Air display does. And you know what, that's actually fine, because you wouldn't want the Nreal Air to be much bigger than it is, because it fills 46 degrees of your field of view, and that's actually a lot. The recommended amount is about 30 to 40 degrees. 30 degrees for kind of mixed use, 40 degrees for cinematic use. So 46 is really kind of pushing it, actually. And I think that's because a lot of the apps were intended for mixed reality use, and they wouldn't fill the entire display, they would just fill a smaller portion of it. So at 46 degrees, it does feel like a very big display in front of your face. You wouldn't want it any bigger than that. One problem that you might have with certain USB-C adapters is that sometimes part of the display can be repeated at the bottom and chopped off at the top. And I think this was due to some misconfiguration with the glasses drivers or firmware. But it's something that Nreal have fixed in a new firmware update, so do go and get the latest firmware from the Nreal Air activation website if you can, and that will provide you with the best experience there. So the glasses themselves have two little speakers here and here on the arms, as I said, and they just pipe audio directly into your ears when you connect them to a Steam Deck or another device that supports them. And they have two individual 1080p displays here, and they are OLED, and they look surprisingly good. The color balance isn't always the same on every device, but I'll come to that later. It ships with 3 different types of nose piece adjustments, so you can swap that out for something else that fits your nose a little bit differently if you want. And the arms are adjustable as well, so I don't like the clicking noise it makes at all, but you can just pivot them to point slightly higher or lower on your face to get a slightly different fit if you want. The glasses also have a few buttons here on the arm that goes over your right ear. It's got a kind of rocker up and down, and that will adjust brightness settings. You get 8 different levels of brightness, and at its brightest, it is very bright. And then here you've got a power button to turn the display on and off. And finally, there's a sensor here up at the top to detect if you're wearing them, so the displays can turn off when they're not in use, which is a concern when you're talking about OLED displays. But yeah, in general, they are very comfortable really, which is why I'm talking about them now. They kind of look like just very chunky sunglasses, although they don't provide any kind of sun protection, so don't wear them to the beach. If you want to use them with other devices, then well, if you have a compatible Android phone, you can plug in the USB-C port straight into your device and it will work. And you'll be able to download the Nreal Nebula app, which has got a whole load of cool kind of mixed reality apps for you to try with the glasses. And those apps are not head-locked, so they will use the 3 degrees of freedom tracking in the glasses to keep the screen in place while you move your head around, and overall it makes for a more comfortable experience. I don't have an Android phone, so I can't review that part of it, but I do have a Mac, an M1 Mac, which is required, and you can plug the glasses directly into that and use their Nebula app as well. So here's how it works with the Mac. Once you've downloaded the Nebula software, you can open that up, plug in the glasses. It might then activate them and update the firmware for you. And then you press this button and you can move the virtual display around into position, and it basically then locks into place when you let go of the button. You can also configure how many screens you have, whether you want just kind of 1 virtual screen or if you want 2 or even 3. And you can also adjust how far away the screens feel like they are. So you can make it feel like it's about as far away as your real monitor. So here's my Mac and the real display, and then through the glasses, see, as I rotate the glasses, the screen stays in space, which is really cool. But yeah, it's there's something odd with the way it updates. So it's jittering slightly as you look left and right, and you'd really want that locked bang in position. So that's a bug that I really hope Nreal can fix with the next release of Nebula for Mac. If you want to use them with other devices, you may have to spend a little bit of extra money, and it costs about $50 or $60 on the US Amazon store. You can't get this in the UK yet. And you'll have to buy the Nreal Air adapter. And this is basically a little block that has got a USB-C port to plug the glasses in on one end, and then an HDMI port for your other device on the other end. So if you were going to use this with your Switch, you would need, well, the official dock or some kind of dongle. This is a third-party dongle, and you plug that into the Switch. Now that would require power, so you plug some sort of USB-C power source in that way, and then you would need an HDMI cable, and you would plug that into the dongle and the other side into the Nreal Air adapter, and then finally you plug the glasses into the adapter. And that's working great. I can see the Switch now on my face. The thing about this adapter is it was designed for the Apple HDMI adapter in mind. So you actually take this sort of spacer block out, which is female HDMI on both ends. See if I can get that to focus. And what you do instead is you take the Apple Lightning HDMI adapter and you plug it directly in there. And then you've got a nice bit of kit that you can plug directly into your phone on that end, and then the Nreal Airs on the other side. And it didn't work for me because this is not the official Apple Lightning to HDMI adapter. It looks like it is, but it's some cheap knockoff, and it requires power to work. And the Nreal Air adapter does not supply power to this part of the adapter. It only supplies HDMI. But you can then get it to work through this complicated setup. And people on Reddit have found all sorts of weird and wonderful ways of connecting their various devices to the Nreal Air with various adapters. One slight drawback of the Nreal Air adapter is that it has a battery inside it and it requires charging. So if you don't want to buy that, that's absolutely fine. You can instead get an HDMI to USB-C DisplayPort adapter. And this is the Go Fanco one, which is particularly compatible. It's the one I'd recommend you can get if you can find it. And this plugs into an HDMI device on this end. It requires power to work, but then it has the USB-C port for the glasses on the other end. So say this was plugged into the Switch. So you'd plug it in by HDMI there. This Switch dongle has a spare USB-A to supply power to the adapter. I plug that end into the Switch, and then give it USB-C power, and then plug the glasses into that side. And that does indeed work, and it means that the adapter doesn't require power. And if you wanted to play your Steam Deck and charge it at the same time, you could do it the same way with a dongle like this. So you end up with a bit of a crazy mess of dongles, but it would work. You'd be able to charge your Steam Deck and play it through the Nreal Airs at the same time. It's just, you might end up spending a lot of money on adapters and dongles this way. So one slight problem you might notice when using all of the powered adapters is that it makes the flickering and banding slightly worse. So just occasionally, I'd say maybe 5% of the time, I noticed I could see some flickering on the display, a little bit like power interference, and I thought it was worse when I was using some sort of odd combination of adapters rather than just using the glasses straight into the Steam Deck, for example. So that's something to keep in mind, but it wasn't really a big problem, and I think you would probably see it and it wouldn't really distract from your enjoyment of the display. But yeah, if you were planning on using them with powered adapters a lot, might be something to keep in mind. So I've been very positive about these glasses so far. What about the downsides? Well, probably the worst thing about them is the support. So using them on Steam Deck, for a long time I only got a maximum of 30 Hertz refresh rate. And that was a bit of a drawback in games that could render at higher frame rates, 40 to 60 on the deck, even at 1080p using the glass's native resolution. But fortunately, Nreal fixed that. If you update the glasses to the latest firmware you can now, they will now support 60 Hertz on Steam Deck. But it does mean that a lot of the mixed reality stuff for the glasses is still locked behind the Nreal Nebula app on Android, and even then only for a certain range of Android phones. So the huge advantage of the whole 3 degrees of freedom tracking that the glasses provide is not available to all users if you have an iPhone or just want to use them with a PC or something. Also, plugging it directly into the Steam Deck, I noticed that sometimes the colors looked a little bit odd, like too saturated, and maybe slightly tinted to the red. It's kind of hard to say in isolation. But I feel like that's something they could fix as well, because using the adapter and plugging it into any HDMI device, the colors look great. So I think it's probably a limitation of the drivers rather than a limitation of the hardware at the moment. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about eye strain, and as I said earlier, when you are looking around with the glasses and there's just this enormous screen locked to your face, you have to look with your eyes around in the image, and that can cause some eye strain after a while. I noticed that after about an hour of use, I was starting to develop a headache. So if you are susceptible to that kind of eye strain, these are probably not going to be comfortable using them in that mode for a long period of time. But if it's something that doesn't bother you, awesome. So what are my final thoughts about the Nreal Air glasses, and should you buy a pair? Well, they are still quite early technology, but they also feel like quite a significant step forward in technology. I mean, they are providing giant displays in a really tiny package. It's sort of been the sci-fi dream for decades now. And if you're going to be traveling a lot with your Steam Deck on very long plane, train or bus journeys or something, and you really want something that will give you some big cinema-like viewing experience, this is a really great way of doing that because they don't add much bulk at all. They don't have any batteries built into them. They just plug in using that one USB-C cable. And I think that's a really convenient kind of duo to take traveling with you. But if you wanted to use them in a kind of business environment with a laptop, well, really just an M1 Mac for now, or maybe your Android phone, then it's a little bit of a harder sell because they're only 3 degrees of freedom tracking. So you won't be able to move your head left and right, up and down, and get the display really locked in space. It'll still feel like it's traveling with you. It only really tracks the rotation of your head. So it's a little bit of a drawback. And when the displays are that much smaller inside the Nreal Air display, they will also be a much lower resolution. So even though the glasses are 1080p, you're only getting a fraction of that actually rendered in front of you. So they also need to fix the bug with the M1 Mac jittering around while it's drawing it. So I wouldn't really buy these for business use yet. I'd wait for version 2. And if you wanted to use them with some other HDMI device like an Xbox or PlayStation or Switch, I think that can work, but just bear in mind that if you want to use these for a really long period of time, you might get some eye strain like I did. You know, it's funny because one of the most kind of dystopian visions of our future, I think, was born from that Aaron Fowler illustration called Reality, where you see a guy slumped in a corner wrapped in bandages and he's clearly addicted to VR or AR or something. And we are trying so hard to make the technology like achievable for that picture. But I kind of think at the moment, these kind of things will still add to your life rather than make you completely neglect it. Something like the Steam Deck and a display for that is still fun. So thank you very much for watching this video. If it was entertaining on some level, please leave me a like, and you can help me out by subscribing to my channel as well. Okay, see you next time.